Welcome to Crossing the Line, the podcast of the National Center to Stop Educator Sexual Misconduct, Abuse, and Exploitation. This is your host, Joelle Casteix. Today's episode is a little different. Recently, I had the opportunity to join Sarah and Diana on their podcast, Blooming After Grooming. Sarah and Diana are survivors of educator sexual abuse who discovered years later that they had been groomed and abused by the same teacher. What began as a shared experience has grown into a remarkable friendship, a healing journey, and an important podcast that gives voices to survivors and explores what life looks like after trauma. I'm sharing this conversation here because many of our listeners know NC Sesame, but may not know much about my own story, how I became involved in this work, or why preventing educator sexual misconduct has become my life's mission. I also want to introduce you to Blooming After Grooming. Their podcast is honest, compassionate, survivor-centered, and deeply hopeful. If you care about healing, resilience, and understanding the long-term impact of grooming and abuse, I encourage you to add it to your regular podcast rotation. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
Diana, I got your number from your resume on LinkedIn. My name is Sarah, and I'm an old student of... And like you, we had a relationship. I don't know the circumstances of your relationship with him, but it concerns me to see his behavior continued long after I knew him. I'm curious if you would be willing to talk to me about your experience. If not, I respect that.
Sarah, I am at a loss of words, but also have so much to say. Yes, I would love to talk to you about this. Were you a student in Iowa? This is Diana.
This is Sarah.
And this is Blooming After Grooming, our podcast. Welcome back to Blooming After Grooming. We are back from our brief hiatus, and sweet listeners, we have some fantastic conversations coming up for you with our guests, and of course, more Groom Scroll. Let us know what else you want to hear from us in this second part of season 2. Today, we talk to a fellow podcast host, Joelle Casteix. She is a survivor of child sexual abuse at a Catholic high school in the Diocese of Orange, California, and has used her experience and resilience to become a leading global expert, author, and keynote speaker for survivors of child sexual assault and institutional cover-up. With more than 20 years of strategic communications experience, Joelle is an expert of child sexual abuse prevention, survivor support and resiliency, social media safety, app development, and international online privacy issues. Her best-selling publications include The Well-Armored Child, A Parent's Guide to Preventing Child Sexual Abuse, The Compassionate Response, How to Help and Empower the Adult Victim of Child Sexual Abuse, and The Power of Responsibility, based on her wildly successful TEDx talk. We will link all of this in our show notes. Currently, Joelle is the chair of the board of directors of Zero Abuse Project and on the board of advisors for NC Sesame, where she hosts their podcast, Crossing the Line, which we have referenced before on this show. Welcome to the show, Joelle Casteix. Hi!
How are you guys doing?
Just catching up on about our weekends and talking about Sarah's fun upcoming plans. How are you?
Nice. I'm good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Joelle. And first of all, I am pronouncing your name correctly, Joelle Casteix, right?
Casteix.
I'm so sorry, Casteix.
Oh, God, no, don't worry about it.
Joelle Casteix.
Casteix,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for coming on to the show, Joelle Casteix. For our listeners, could you please share with us a little bit, as much as you're willing to, your origin story? How did you get involved in this work? How did you get involved with Sesame? I always start these questions and then give like 50 questions. So let me just pull it back as much as you want to share. How did you get involved with this work?
Well, like, I think all survivors, it was like accidental activism. This certainly wasn't a career aspiration for me. I had other plans that would have been far more financially lucrative, but here I am. So I was born and raised in Southern California, where I still live, and attended a very well-known Catholic high school here in Orange County called Mater Dei. My dad went to the school. It is like this storied campus. People even say it's a little bit culty. And like a lot of students, I was extraordinarily vulnerable at the time when I was in high school because my mother was an alcoholic and my dad was in denial. And so I did what a lot of kids do, which is get involved in school activities. So I was and am a singer, and I was being prepped to go to an opera conservatory. And so I was in the elite touring choir and was, singing quite a bit. And so halfway through my sophomore year, I had a total breakdown and tried to commit suicide and ended up in a psychiatric facility for a couple months. And so I got out of there, and that next fall, we got a new choir teacher. And the previous choir teacher who was a priest, this is a Catholic high school. He, went through the list with the new guy and said, these are all the students. So this is Joelle, by the way. Her mother is an alcoholic. She's vulnerable. She spent time in a facility, so on and so forth. And little did I know, but this new choir teacher used that information and information that he got about many of my peers to begin to target and groom and abuse us. So the grooming began right around my beginning of my junior year with the flattery and no one understands you like I do, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I get you. And then of course there are all the yellow flag boundary violations. Oh, I'll give you a ride home. Oh, why don't you stay in my office for a while? This is way before the era of texting or any of that stuff, but there was a lot of one-on-one time behind closed doors. And it got into pretty serious, full-blown abuse pretty quickly. And so I'm barely 16 at this time. And I was confused because, this is a Catholic school and we're being told that, your virginity is sacred and, all that other stuff. And so this is going on with the teacher, and I'm confused. And so I go to a vice principal who had been very, very kind to me when I was hospitalized and whose son was in my class. And I'm like, hey, something weird is going on. I don't quite understand. Can you help me? And she and this teacher were very good friends, and she already knew. And so she looked at me and said, "Oh, don't you? Well, that's what love is." And don't
no,
and don't say anything because you might end up back in that psychiatric institution, and you could get into a lot of trouble.
Oh my God!
So that shut me up. And that also gave him the opportunity to target, my peers. So by the time I graduated, I was pregnant and had a sexually transmitted disease. And he had abused 2 of my friends. And it was absolutely horrific. And for me, the abuse was bad, but it was a treatment by the school and my peers and my parents afterward that made it worse. Because when, I tried to tell my friends what was going on, and you're a teenager, you're not equipped with the skills to logically say, I feel like there are boundary violations going on.
Yeah.
And so they blamed me, and they said it was my fault that he went on to abuse the other girls because I taught him to be a child predator.
Jesus Christ.
The school said it was, my fault because I had emotional problems, and I have all that in documentation. And then when I wanted it to end, because I went to my first year of college and it wasn't ending, and I needed it to end because it was really affecting me. So I told my parents, and I thought that they would, do the parent thing, even if it was just to threaten him with a gun or something, just, some kind of parent thing. But instead they said, my mother looked me in the eye and said, Joelle, you wouldn't be in this problem if you had just kept your legs shut. And it's like,
man. I'm looking for my fidget and I can't find it, and I really need it.
Those, I was just talking to someone this last weekend about how that almost hurts more. Than the abuse. Like an abuser, you can be like, that person's a piece of shit. But then it's all those people around you that are supposed to care and be on your side and support you and love you that turn it on you. That's a deep wound.
Well, and that stuff doesn't go away because I still deal with, I live like, what, 5 miles from the high school. I run into people. I'm very vocal in the media. I'm still blamed by a lot of people. My dad is 87 years old and is going downhill fast, and when he gets into some of his confused moments, likes to talk about it. But of course,
Really?
what he is remembering isn't like accurate. And Joelle, you were a big girl, and I thought you could handle it, and stuff like that. The school itself doesn't like me very much, and so I'm jumping ahead 40
Least
years.
shocking information.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Oh, you mean they didn't reach out to you and like say, how can we make things better? And do you want to help us make things better for future kids? Ah,
No. I'll get to that because I'm jumping too far forward ahead. So I struggle my way through college, but I make it through, and but I'm suicidal and I'm a total shit show disaster, and poor guys who dated me. Ugh. Then I had a very short starter marriage and got divorced and moved back. I was in Colorado then. I moved back to California, and it was one of those watershed moments where I'm like, by this time I'm like 27, 28. And I was like, I'm at a fork in the road here. And if I continue down this path, I will be dead. I will die. I'm self-destructive. I'm falling apart. I will die. Or I can get my act together and fix something. So I said, okay, we'll give fixing the old college try. I did that, and I got my career in line, and was being somewhat successful. And in 2001, a student from my high school, he was from the high school that my principal went to after he left the high school I went to. Mater Dei was the high school, and the principal there started a new high school in South Orange County called Santa Margarita, took all the teachers down there. He's also the serial perpetrator. His name is Father Michael Harris. He has something like 30 known victims. It's crazy. Wow. And this is all verifiable on the internet. I'm not just spinning tales. This case against Harris it lasts about 5 years, and they finally settle for like $5 million. And this is in 2001. This is unheard of. And the school's like, oh, well, we didn't know. And I'm like, that is bullshit. We all knew in high school because Father Harris would take kids on trips to Hawaii, and he'd have kids over at his house to watch movies. And I was accidentally invited along once, and he showed up wearing short shorts and no shirt. And it was like, ew. We knew that there were all these red flag behaviors. So like all good little Catholic girls do, I wrote a letter to the Diocese of Orange and to the high school and said, I want to be a part of the solution. And at this time I was a vice president of a public relations firm, and they saw that and they're like, uh-oh. So they brought me in, and they're like, oh, Joelle, of course. We totally want you to help, but we don't want you to like do anything public. We don't want you to talk to students at the school. We don't want to do any of that stuff. So they put me
on... familiar. So relatable.
They put me on what was called a lay review board. And for people who follow the Catholic clergy abuse scandal, all the dioceses had to have this lay review board. And it was a sham. We were supposed to review cases. We never reviewed cases. And I quit. I stepped down because my then boyfriend, now husband, was like, Joelle, come on, you're smarter than this. And I quit. And that was when California opened a civil window for survivors of child sexual abuse as our first civil window in 2003. So I came forward and filed a lawsuit. By this time, I was no longer working for the PR firm, and I was doing a whole bunch of contract work for the County of Orange. And because I had time, and because I was in media and I knew how to do press events and I could speak publicly and all that stuff, I decided, you know what? And so many people had said so many shitty things about me for so many years. It's like, screw it. I'm going to take my story back. I'm going to go public. I'm going to use my name. I don't care. And so I did that. And you know what happens when you go public? All your jobs disappear. Wow, who knew? It's like suddenly I am effectively unemployed. But I spent the next 2 years, basically, since I really didn't have much else to do, doing media and press events and digging up documents and working with the media and making things very, very uncomfortable for Mater Dei in the Diocese of Orange. And they tried to make things very uncomfortable for me, too. They said that they had no evidence of the abuse. They said that nothing had ever happened. No administrators ever knew about it, that I was making up things, that I was exaggerating my role on the lay review board, all this other stuff. 2005, my case settles. There were 97 cases. in the Diocese of Orange, and they all settled for like $100 million in a global settlement. But I got the documents in my case, and it had dun, 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 the perpetrator signed confession, like
Wow.
a piece of paper that said, "Oh yeah, I molested Joelle and other students." It had a signed document from the administrator that said, "Oh yeah, I knew, but I didn't do anything for a couple years until, things got kind of hot, and then we had to, quietly."
And then we had to
resign."
do something.
We
Oh.
had
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
There was a letter from the principal of the school, who has since been honored by the school for all this great stuff, to the diocese saying that I had a lot of emotional problems, and that's probably why there was, this happened. But, there's never a dull moment around here. And
What?
it's like, yeah, literally, it's like, oh, never a dull moment at the corner of Bristol and Edinger. And I'm just like, So I have all these documents that now show everything that I, everything I said all along was true, because, and for your listeners who've been through this, and for you, they try to make you think you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They do everything they can to gaslight you, so you lay in bed at night saying, "God, did that really happen? Did I misinterpret? Or what happened?" So, because in 2005, it still kind of wasn't particularly cool to be in the movement. It was hard to get jobs, so I just decided to turn it into a career. And so I kind of became a traveling roadshow, and I went to where survivors were and perpetrators needed to be exposed. And I would go to cities I'd never been to and piss bad people off. And it was great. I did work in Guam and the villages of Northwest Alaska, all through Arizona, all through Highway 66. I did work in Europe. I did work on the East Coast. And I worked to open statutes of limitations. And I was able to go in there with, hey, I have documents. This is what you will find. And they will never share this with you, but I can, you can take these documents, and this is what you can expose in these cases. Because during all of this, the man who sexually abused me was working as a professor in a small liberal arts college in Adrian, Michigan. And so I thought, well, the college wants to know.
So many familiar, yes.
Let me guess. The college didn't want to know.
Oh, the college, they want to know, and they want to get to the bottom of this. So in 2004, before my case settled, I flew out to Adrian, Michigan with another advocate from Toledo, which is right there. And we went to the school, and God bless Claudia Versalati. So we sit there, and I have my documents, and I'm like, this is what happened. And they're like, you're just an angry ex-girlfriend who has sour grapes that her teacher boyfriend broke up with her. And I literally thought that Claudia was going to crawl over that table and just throttle one of them. And Claudia's a big woman, and she goes, I may be fat, but I'm not stupid. Are you saying she's stupid? And she's like screaming this.
I love Claudia.
Yeah. And they're just like, oh no, it was a long time ago, Joelle. So this is 2004, and this happened in 1988. Seriously, not that long before. And I'm like, well, what if he had an inappropriate relationship with a student right now who was an adult? And he said, oh, well, that goes against our code of conduct. So he would be fired. So he was allowed to stay in his job until a little reckoning time called Me Too happened. And the stars aligned, I guess you would say. So I wrote a Me Too letter that I put on my blog. And because I was pissed, like every few years I would like raise a stink. It's like, this guy molested girls. It's not just me. He molested other girls too. Even if you don't like
living
me.
his life.
Yeah. And so
he was access to students every day.
And he's a choir director. And so he would take his choirs on tour. And when you take your choir on tour, you're touring with colleges and high schools and everything else. There's all this access. And I get so mad sometimes if I found out that he was going on tour, I'd write the tour company, like send them all the information. And the school would get kicked off the tour. The students would be so mad. I'm like, I don't fucking care.
Also, just fire this one
out of
guy,
harm's way.
And then the school can go on the tour.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, you can thank me later kind of thing. So I wrote the Me Too letter, and my husband was just like, Joelle, be prepared to be disappointed. You try to do this all the time. Nothing happens. I'm like, I know, but I just can't live with myself. And so I wrote it, slammed the computer shut and said, I'm not going to go on until Monday. I go on. I'm like, ooh, had something like 30,000 shares. I'm like, ooh.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
I was adopted by these two women in Adrian who were community members, and they were upset. And so they started doing protests. And because it came from the community, and because he had conveniently hit retirement age, he was allowed to, again, quietly retire. And he was able to, and this will be another familiar story with you, the reason he wasn't fired is because he was protected by the union.
Yeah.
And so that's
kept crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so much of that is like relatable either to our experience or other survivors who have reached out to us on the pod of just like, it shouldn't be shocking and it shouldn't be stunning anymore, but it is how much these institutions will bend over backwards to do nothing when they are handed with proof and evidence of abuse versus just saying like, holy shit, we need to get this person out of here. I just always think like, wouldn't it be common sense that it would cost less money to hire a new person than to get sued when another person gets abused and then they find out that you tried to warn them 10 years ago and they didn't do anything about it?
Oh, yeah. And it gets worse because so in 2019, we passed AB 218, which was a 3-year civil window in California for survivors of child sexual abuse to come forward and use the courts. So, of course, woohoo, I'm in hog heaven. I'm like raising awareness. I'm reaching out to people who'd been reaching out to me over the past 15, 16 years. And I said, I don't think there's anything that can be done. And I was writing about it and doing events. And so there were a couple of cases that were up against my high school. And of course, they were my classmates because it's amazing that any of my classmates made it through that school without being abused because there were 13 active perpetrators at the school at the time.
Wow.
So this one case was heading towards trial, and they decided that the best way to protect students and to get to the bottom of things would be to subpoena me and my emails and my social media messages over the past 18 years. And so I get a subpoena.
Which is just so crazy.
What?
Like, first of all, let's backtrack a little bit.
Yes.
Did you say
I'm going to go get my fidget
active
thing. I can hear you
perpetrators?
guys.
Yeah. Diana's like, my anxiety's going through the roof.
Yeah. So
there were 13 active like at the same time or over a certain window of time?
This was over probably like a 10-year period. It is not Rosemead, but it's almost Rosemead. It's like Rose. Yeah. I used to think Mater Dei was the worst, and then I heard all about the Rosemead stuff. But it was bad because it was the principal, the vice principal, the band director, the choir director, the cross country coach, a football coach, the AV guy that they brought in.
Like,
oh yeah, it wasn't just like a couple of coaches, like part-time coaches thing.
Directors.
It was a structure, and so so instead of looking at their policies and procedures and saying, "Gosh, we have a real problem here," it's like it's so much easier to depose Joelle for 8 hours and to subpoena 30,000 emails and all her communications. It was insane.
I'm never going to get this time back. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was weird because it's like, I know where all the bodies are buried. I mean, I could have had a barn burner of a deposition. I mean, I could have said so much, and they're just like, on line 3 of this email, he said, I'm like, I sent that email in 2014. I don't know what I said. Yeah. So that's and those cases settled, so they're off my case for now. But yeah, it doesn't end, and so they depose me. They get all my all my emails and stuff, and then like 3 or 4 days later, I get a text from a gal in my class, and she's like, "Oh, Joelle, I'm stuck at the Mater Dei 75th anniversary event. My parents made me take them because we're at the age where we have to drive our parents around," and she goes, "You'll never believe this." And so she takes a picture of the commemorative book, and it was like an oral history. And one of the oral histories was from a girl a year behind me talking about how wonderful Mr. Hodgman was. And he's the reason that she is so successful in the music industry and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's really? Crazy. You didn't do a find and replace when you put this together saying, look for these names. Yeah. These are the perpetrators. Find those, you get rid of it. No, it's in there.
That is so wild to just be like, who was a good egg? We liked that guy.
Yeah, man. The choirs, they doubled in size. Oh my God.
Well, I'm sure for the school though, it was like if this student had a successful career, they just want to brag about that student's success, and they don't give a shit about what employee she happens to be mentioning,
No.
which is insane.
Yeah, it didn't dawn on, you think the poor graphic designer, maybe they knew and they're like, well, I'm not allowed to take text out.
I know, as a designer, that really stresses me out that like you could make something like that and not understand the history or the implications of it and then feel terrible that it was included, but has nothing to do with you. Like you're just told what to put in there. But God, yeah, I always think it's crazy when schools don't even like retroactively go back and like take things off their website, take things down. Like our abuser, there's still some article from like the school paper where some student the year before we came forward. Mm-hmm. And I feel so bad for this girl because she's like, he's my favorite teacher. He's so great. Boop, boop, boop. And it was like only a year or two before we came forward. And I'm like, take that down. That
I know.
Poor
It
girl
still comes up.
is probably so embarrassed that like she's vouching for this dude when she had no clue theoretically of like his history. Like, goddamn, people just take a website page down. It's not that hard.
Oh,
like,
I know. But they don't, I have spent a lot of time doing like protests in front of buildings that were dedicated to child perpetrators. It's like, Father X might have raised the money for this hall, but Father X has 42 children now who say that he sexually abused them. So maybe let's think about renaming. What was the second choice for the people?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's okay. We can admit that mistakes were made and do better.
Yeah.
That's the resistance that I think is so fascinating with the church and schools and Boy Scouts and like whatever, the list goes on forever, right? But like just this inability to just acknowledge that harm was done and like own it and move forward. And we talk about a lot on the show is just like, I think so much of it is because legally they're told not to, because if they take ownership, then they have legally taken ownership. But 90% of the time, that's all a survivor wants is someone to just say, you are not crazy. This did happen to you. This was not your fault. We fucked up. How can we make it better? And that's never what happens.
Oh, yeah. So when I came forward in 2001, when I wrote my little letter to the diocese, I got a phone call from this woman. She's like, oh, Joelle, I'm the HR director for the Diocese of Orange. I would love to meet you for lunch. I'm like, oh, okay. So we sit down and she's like, Joelle, I went through your file. There's nothing in it. I talked to Lou, who was the administrator who knew everything. Oh, she is just so upset that you would think that this had happened. She's like, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I just want someone to tell me that they're sorry. I don't want this to happen anymore. And she goes, okay, Joelle, I am so sorry that you think this happened to you.
Oh my God.
Joelle, I'm so sorry that you're mentally ill and that you are delusional about what happened to you.
And it gets better because it ends up that she wasn't the HR director of the diocese. She was their general counsel. And
stop it. How is that?
I've only laughed.
Oh no, it's
you got
because it's absurd. It's
absurd.
Yeah,
it is absolutely absurd. And it's also like, how
and
I think it's an added level of like disgusting, right? That like you were going to a Catholic school, and that these are people that are like talking about being one with God and blah, 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 right? And like using religion to abuse people and using a religion to gaslight people and to dismiss true crime is just, that's just disgusting.
Well, yeah, welcome to the clergy sexual abuse crisis. I mean,
yeah.
There's my personal opinion. Many people don't agree with me, but people haven't agreed with me for 55 years, and why should they start now? So I have worked with a lot of survivors over the past 26 years, and I am finding that there are many, many more female survivors in the Catholic Church than anyone is willing to admit. There's two kinds of women in the Catholic Church. Actually, there's three. There's the Virgin Mary, and then there's the whore, and then there's your mother. And those, and there the twain shall meet. And so it was what that did was kept girls quiet, because it's like, well, you've been told to treasure your virginity. What have you done? And so I think that has kept girls quiet because they just don't believe that it is their fault, that there's something intrinsically wrong with them that broke this priest or coach or teacher or whatever and made them do what they did. So
I could see that.
Poor
also,
man.
I'm interested. I'll ask you real quick. I had an extreme phobia of immaculate conception as a child because I was raised Catholic. I don't know if anyone else ever shared it, but I was always terrified I was going to wake up one day and just be knocked up by God and be like, "What the fuck? Like this isn't okay," and that no one would believe me and they would like think I was a slut. Like it was like a real.
Now this shows
phobia.
that this shows you're a lazy Catholic. Because the Immaculate Conception isn't Mary getting pregnant with Jesus. The Immaculate Conception is when Elizabeth got pregnant with Mary.
Who the fuck is Elizabeth?
Yes. So the Feast of the Immaculate Conception was when...
This is not what I was taught.
Yeah, but no, that's not the they call that something else. But Immaculate Conception is when Mary was conceived. So,
Joelle,
my God.
Okay, so wow, we had a delightful, wonderful get to know you little meet and greet a few weeks ago, but we did not get into all of this. And let me just say, first of all, I'm so happy you're still here, and that you have used all of what has happened to you to help other people, and that you were doing it at a time before me too. You were doing it at a time where you were like, I don't care if no one else is talking about this. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to put myself out there. And I'm so sorry that time after time you were told the wrong thing over and over again by your friends, by your family, by the church, by this fucking HR council lady. Like, I just want to take a moment to sit in that. And thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you for honoring it. And, it's nice because normally, when, Joelle, tell us your story, it's dun, 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 it's serious time. And it's just so nice to be able to sit back and laugh because it's ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. When they had 9,000 chances to do the right thing, they're like, no. I like this way better.
Yeah, let's just keep doubling down. Maybe she'll just stop talking about it.
Yeah, so I was born in 1970, which is the year of the Iron Dog. And I am not into the Chinese zodiac at all, but my husband looked it up and he's like, "Oh my God, Joelle, you are an iron dog. You just do not let go." And it's true. I don't like it when people lie to me. I don't like it when people do stupid things and then try to blame me for it. So, that's their problem. And now they got to deal with it.
I got to look up. I know I'm a horse, but I don't remember. Yeah, I've never looked up what kind of horse. You said you were, I forgot how you put it, a one woman show, kind of going around helping raise awareness, helping educate communities. How were you able to establish those connections? How were you able to get into wherever it was you were able to get into to do your presentation or your education or whatever it was?
So as much as I would like to say I was one woman traveling show, I did stand on the shoulders of giants, and I still stand on the shoulders of giants. So when I came forward, a group called SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, reached out to me, and it was started by Barbara Blaine back in 1988. And that's when she came forward, and they put an ad in the paper, have you been abused by a priest? Come to our meeting, kind of thing. And they didn't think anyone would show up, and 100 people showed up. I was deeply entrenched with them for many years, and they're still very, very active. If you saw Spotlight, SNAP was the group in that. So through them, I got in contact with, other advocacy organizations. And then I also worked very closely with a lot of the attorneys handling these cases, the civil attorneys, because what would happen is a survivor would come forward to me and say, "Hey, I have this case, but we need to find more survivors." I'm like, because they were trying to discredit or kick the case out. Or I would be given "Hey, Joelle, in the course of this case, we found out that there was this perpetrator at this church, you need to let people know." And a lot of times, the guy was still there. So I always had court documents. I always had arrest records. I always had police reports. I always had something, because I've never been sued and I don't want to be sued.
That's my next question.
Yeah. To verify what is going on. You want to make sure that especially, because social media during a lot of this time was just kicking into gear. I found that so people didn't constantly have phones in your face, but you also had to make sure that you went in there well equipped, and that you can tell people, "Hey, this is the concern I have here. There were, 4 perpetrators at this church. You need to talk to your kids, and you need to talk to, adults who were here at the time, and make sure that they are not suffering alone and that they're getting the help that they need." And About 80% of the time I was met with, go take a flying leap. We're calling the cops. But again, I wouldn't go on church property. I followed all the rules. But then every once in a while, a community would just blow me away. For a number of years, I did work in Hawaii when they opened the civil window there. There was this homegrown priest. Because what I found most of the time, and you'll see in the Catholic Church, is that, priest A abuses in Boston. Well, we should probably send him to California. Oh, he abused in California. Oh, let's send him to Hawaii. Oh, let's send him to Guam. And then suddenly he makes it all the way around the globe back to Boston. So this guy was homegrown in Hilo, Hawaii, homegrown priest, and he had this music festival, and he did all this other stuff. But he was also like a super active perpetrator. And there were his name was George DaCosta, and there was a whole bunch of survivors. And then he was very good at finding survivors just on the cusp of 18, or victims just on the cusp of 18, so they really didn't have any, ability to come forward. So I was going to he had this little church. There was a little parish church, and it was on Native Hawaiian land. And so they had renamed it like a 19-letter name that I couldn't pronounce. And I was going to go and talk to the people there and be like, hey, this is a real problem. And so I showed up after mass, and there was about 10 people sitting in a circle. And here's a chair for you, Joelle. And we ended up having like a 3-hour conversation. And they fed me, and they're like, yeah, we never liked George anyway. He was a problem, this and that. They gave me some phone numbers. I mean, it was like, so there are a lot of communities out there, because especially for the Native Hawaiians, I mean, they've really been given the short end of the stick so many times that, they have no problem outing bad things. I've successfully been able to expose all kinds of perpetrators, get people to come forward. I lobbied to change laws. And the nice thing is, with the Catholic Church, and in the case of public schools, FOIA requests, is that you can get paper documenting just about everything. And when you think you're going to stand there saying I'm the only one, there's always someone else. There's always a piece of paper out there. There's always someone who will hedge and be like, okay, I saw it. I'll do an affidavit, kind of thing. So
that's what we're waiting for our abuser.
It's a long haul. I mean, I was from 2001 to 2018 to get my perpetrator out of his job. I mean, it seems glacial. And I don't know if we talked about this when we had our meet and greet, but when I started the work, my husband and I would go to a party or something, and people say, hey guys, what do you do? And my husband would say, oh, I work for Toyota. And then I'd say, oh, I do PR and marketing. And because if you said, oh, I'm one of the leading national advocates to expose sexual abuse in institutions such as the Catholic Church, people are like,
See, I would be like, and you and I are going to go stand in the corner. And we're going to talk about this
in 2002.
Big glass of wine in our hands.
Yeah, 2002, 2003. Now, and I've dipped down the work a little bit, but now we go to parties and people, what do you do? My husband says I'm retired, and I say I do PR and marketing, because I don't want to talk about work, because people are like you. They'll be like, really? Oh my God, I knew this guy and that guy. And it depends on my mood, because I have been to parties where, people have come to me and said, oh, did you know Father so-and-so? And I'm like, yes. And then, you scratch down all these notes as fast as you can. It's like, well, can I call you on Monday? This is not the time or place. And because once people have 1 or 2 cocktails in them, they'll be a little more
tell
willing.
You everything.
Yeah. And then on Monday, they're like, well, since I already told you, I might as well finish it. But yeah, it's amazing what I've learned at parties. And I also used to get a lot of people who would press rosaries into my hand as I was leaving. May Jesus and Mary help you in your work. And I'm like, I don't go to the car. My husband's like, another rosary? I'm like, yeah. they meant well.
Yeah, I get it. But it just feels so pushy on let me give you the solution that I think is going to help you. I don't care if you believe in this or not. So do you still do any of that kind of advocacy work to, what am I trying to say? Name, I guess, the perpetrators?
Yeah. So what happened when we opened the civil window in California in 2019, and then COVID hit, and that really changed how advocacy was done. A lot of different players, I guess, got into the game. When I say players, I mean attorneys handling these cases who didn't know me and wouldn't share information with me and realized what I could do to help, survivors and everything else. And that's when I started working with an organization called Zero Abuse Project. And they are more focused on prevention and intervention, especially when it comes to law enforcement and first responders. And so I'm the chair of the board of directors there. And so I kind of took a step back a little bit from the advocacy. I was doing a lot of work on AI in child safety and using AI to identify patterns of behaviors in institutions when they recognize that there's an incident of child sexual abuse. And so I presented at the UN and stuff like that. And then COVID.
Oh, no big deal.
Yeah, you're like, the UN, whatever, shrug. Anyways.
So then COVID hit, and when these cases heated up and attention started to get on to me, it was one of those where it's like, God, I took a step back because of that. And that's when I got involved with Sesame, because I was abused in a Catholic school, but it was educator sexual abuse, and I understand and get it. And I met Terry over the phone in like 2004. Wait, no, my son was born in 2006. She said, "Well, we have an opportunity for someone to go on the Montel Williams show. Are you willing to do it?" Now,
you're the person that Terry told us this story.
Oh, okay.
From the other side.
Yeah, I had never met Terry. She had never met me. And she just calls me and says, "Will you go on the Montel Williams show?" I'm like, okay. And because I had the experience. And so I fly to New York and I do Montel Williams. And so I met her then, and then I never heard anything back. And so, I just kept on my merry way. And then when I was doing work in Europe with AI, I met this super cool dude, Fritz. And Fritz is, you always meet those people who are connectors. Oh, you have to meet this person, this person. Yes. So he's like, "Oh, I have someone you need to meet." Amos Gira, who is on the advisory board of NC Sesame. Amos meets me. He's like, "I got someone you need to meet, Billy Joe Graham." And so then all of a sudden I'm back with, "Hey, Terry, nice to see you again." So yeah. So that's how I got involved there. So I'm able to bring in, my clergy expertise. Plus, I have a marketing background, so I can help them with things like the website and social media and partnerships and stuff like that. And then we have a film screening coming up, but that will be past when this airs. So yeah, it's great because so much has changed since I started doing this work. And my lack of understanding of the protections that were in place, I think, were impeding my ability to help people. In the clergy abuse movement, it's like, just call the cops, call the cops, call the cops. If they say internal investigation, you say, "I will not cooperate." Now I've learned, especially when it comes to schools, that internal investigation is maybe the only thing that gets that teacher out. So you participate. And because the cops may say, "Well, it doesn't meet a level of criminal misconduct." But the school can say, "Well, it breaks 19 of our policies, and therefore he's fired. And we're going to," I'm pretending this is an excellent school, "we're going to make sure this person never has another job." And live in my fantasy world. Yeah. So I've learned a ton, and it's so much more. The Catholic Church issue is very based in data because the Catholics are such good record keepers. You see how a system protected perpetrators because they felt that they owed these priests something. And then that same thing happened with lay teachers. Like the guy who abused me was just a lay teacher. He wasn't a priest. But with public schools, there is so much more raw data available. And I think that we are now sitting on the precipice of being really able to scare the shit out of people about how prevalent this is and be able to scare legislators and administrators and everyone who has the power to make a difference, scare them into doing the right thing. Because just like in politics, when we're working to pass legislation, people say, "Well, what motivates politicians?" Like, money. No, money doesn't motivate politicians. Hugging babies. I don't know. No, it's fear. The only thing that they respond to is fear. Fear that they are going to be shamed. Fear that they're going to be voted out of office. Fear that they're going to be booted off committee or this or that or the other. And so the movement has been able to gather so much data and so many strong survivors and so much information that we are able to fight fire with fire and use the fear of this data and fear of this information to be like, you have to do the right thing because it's too scary not to, and you're too much of a chicken not to. So just do it,
like if you're not researching and documenting these cases or this abuse, then you can't like use that information in the exact way that you're talking about, and I think there is a lot of raw data out there, but like it's not necessarily being like collected in digestible ways. I've had a lot of conversations with different advocates here in Iowa just about like, okay, how do you take this annual report from the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners, right? About like how many people even came forward with allegations last year. And how do you take that plus like police reports, blah, 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 and then make that like an infographic, like a one-sheeter. And I'm a designer, so I'm always like, I will do that. But it's always like, okay. But nobody ever like, there's always just this, we always talk, it feels like there's so many great people, but finding the connective tissue to like get the right people connected with the right people so things actually move forward is a real struggle, because I think you do need to have it in digestible pieces. I emailed a legislator last week and I had to email, like I sent links, references to the, statements I was making so it didn't sound like a wackadoodle, right? So I'm like, this is real data. This is the research. But it's like some of the stuff I linked to, it's like a 27-page long research study. It's like, he's not going to read this.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to read it.
So NC Sesame is doing a study, and they just did, they scraped, or they've been collecting 14 years worth of Google data about teacher arrests. So they had the various search terms, teacher arrested for sexual misconduct. Because Billie Jo Grant, her specialty is getting data to tell the story. Mm-hmm. Then we turned it into this beautifully digestible web thing. It's on the NC Sesame webpage. And that's just the 14 years of teacher arrest data. And they talk about, the age of the victims and the age of the perpetrators and the sex of the victims, and so it's fascinating. And finding those people who know how to, because there's people who know how to design data, that's you, or design the final product, people who know how to collect data. And then there's people who know how to take that data and turn it into a story that's digestible. Yeah. And it's like Billie Jo Grant is one of those. I am not one of those. And I think that as in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to find so many more people educated in this field. I don't know how old Billie Jo Grant is. I know that she's younger than I am, but not significantly. But when she went and got her PhD and was studying, sexual misconduct in an education program, I'm like, did they want you in the program? Because that was like kind of a scary, no one wants to, bring in a graduate student who's going to look at all the bad things that happen in your industry. Yeah. And now I think that schools of education and schools of data, they're going to be much more open to that. And there's going to be so many more people, I think, especially women who are going into these STEM fields. It's like, hey, it's this, I am a numbers person, but I'm also a storyteller. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity, hint, hint, to any women who might be listening to this, hint, hint, to, learn to understand data and how to tell that story, because I think that there are huge opportunities out there to help survivors.
I do think so much has changed and so much hasn't changed, right? And talking to people like you and Terry who have been like doing this work for so long, I think can sound discouraging, because you imagine the amount of time, right, that you guys have been doing that work. And but at the same time, I do think just being a person, not even just a survivor, but a person, like culturally, like the conversation has just shifted so much in the last 10 years. Like this is not something, like I have family members that were sexually assaulted in the 70s, and it was like same thing. They told their parents were like, well, you're a whore now, and if you tell anybody, you will put shame on the family, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And now it's like we have this podcast, and I have like neighbors that walk up to me and be like, oh yeah, I was abused when I was a kid, and it was really messed up, and they're just talking to me about it, like on the sidewalk, and I think that's a awesome step forward. So I like the idea that you have of like, what does that mean on a career path? Like, what's the next stage beyond just talking?
I mean, when you look at it too, a lot of it is how we've changed the conversation with our kids when it comes to prevention education. Mm-hmm. So going to Catholic school, if you said vagina, you got a detention.
What?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
Diana, my mom, I think booger was a dirty word in her house.
Fart was a big dirty word. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't say boogers. She didn't know what balls were.
No wonder everyone is ashamed of their bodies.
Oh yeah.
God,
so So wait, yeah. So and I didn't bring this up in my origin story part, but I did it when my son was born. I got into prevention education because I get these parents who are just like, Joelle, how can you have a child? Aren't you so scared? And I'm like, no, because you raise a well-armored and empowered child who's empowered about their body, and the predator will move on to someone else because predators want the lowest hanging fruit. They don't want to waste their time getting that kid. They want to spend all their time getting these 15 kids. And so I wrote a book about it, The Well-Armored Child, How to Parents Guide to Prevent Child Sexual Abuse. So my son, he's 19 now, and when he was a kid, that's when we really started teaching kids the proper biological names of their body parts.
Mm-hmm.
This is a vagina, this is a penis, these are your testicles, so on and so forth, because we found that, and this is in evidence-based studies, that if a little girl says, oh, this is my vagina, a perpetrator is going to say, well, I'm going to go to the little girl who doesn't know what that is, because a girl who knows what her vagina is can report that someone touched it and can tell exactly, so on and so forth. And so my son, just saying vagina means, so big deal. Yeah. And that has been a serious change in the conversation there, because what they did was, and I would tell parents this when they get all bent out of shape, I can't say vagina. I'm like, do you get embarrassed about talking about your liver? No. Yeah. No. You get embarrassed talking about your, gallbladder? No. Mm-hmm. Don't be embarrassed talking about your vagina, because it is an organ that serves a very important biological medical purpose, just like all of your other organs. And so that's been a huge change. And so because we got kids talking about it, they're coming forward more. We had people like me, standing in front of churches and schools and saying this happened to me, and using the civil justice system. And so it just made it safer for people to be like, oh, I guess it is okay for me to say, this happened to me. Back when I was married to my first husband, we were involved in a multi-level marketing company. And yes. And
girl, you need to make a movie about your life.
Yeah. The next book is a memoir, I hope.
So the multi-level marketing, and the thing that they would say is, there's a part of the multi-level marketing dream for everybody. You can be a consumer. You can be what we would now call an influencer, but there was no social media. So you could just be like a teller about her, or you can be a distributor, or you can be a business builder. Now, of course, the goal was that to make everyone a business builder. And as you can see from my vast wealth, it was highly successful. But I kind of say the same thing about the child protection and survivors movement. There's a part of that dream for everybody. You can be a Joelle and, stand on rooftops and do things like this and, lead organizations. But you know what? Kind of sucks to be Joelle. Maybe you just want to be a community member consumer who teaches their kids child safety and body awareness. Or maybe you want to be what they call now an influencer, but would just be a talker about it. Hey, I'm a survivor and I'm okay, and it's okay to talk about it, and I can help you get services and stuff. So, I mean, there's a part of you can play any role you want. You don't have to be me, and you certainly shouldn't have to be silent. So
our last episode, or one of our last episodes, we were talking with Piper Stratton, who is a school psychologist and a licensed therapist. And we were asking her, like, how do you help kids who maybe don't want to be helped, or say they don't want to be helped, but really they do. And she was like, it's going to take time to unwind someone from something that maybe they're wrapped up in, but also just talking to your kids. Like, she also is a mother of 2 boys. She told us about the study, basically like the little boys who were talked to about whether or not to intervene when someone's in danger were more likely, like so many more times more likely to actually intervene when they were older than boys who were not talked about it. And it, again, like, it seems like such a obvious thing, but as Sarah has shared, she knows some people, some parents who just are afraid or embarrassed or whatever the case may be to not talk to their kids, or they think that their kids know all this stuff, or it's important to still have those conversations with their children. It's important to still raise your children, right? For the world that they're going to live in.
I use the fire drill analogy. Okay, we'll do the crossing the street one. So everybody teaches their kid to cross the street. Hold hands, look left, look right, look left again, walk slowly, don't run. You don't teach your child about crossing the street by showing them videos of people being dismembered by speeding cars as they run across the street.
I would hope not.
You could. You
don't.
could.
Yeah. And it's just like
but not
with
suggested.
yeah, with fire drills. With a fire drill, the alarm goes off, you stand up quietly, you walk out in a straight line, you go to your assigned place, the teacher calls roll, you say your name. You don't teach kids about fire safety by asking for a volunteer and pouring gasoline on them and setting them on fire so that everyone can see how awful it is to be, set on fire. So you got to take that same view when it comes to abuse prevention. You don't teach your kids about preventing abuse by saying, when the abuser does these horrible things. No, you teach them you have a bubble and you can choose to not invite people into your bubble. And if someone steps into your bubble, you can say, excuse me, I'm going to step back. You teach them, the names of their body parts. You teach them that they don't have to hug when they don't want to. Mm-hmm. You teach them what are okay behaviors and what aren't okay behaviors. Is it okay for you to be in a room alone with an adult? There's so many easy things to teach that you don't have to, teaching child sexual abuse prevention has nothing to do with talking about child sexual abuse. And that's what, you got to make clear to parents.
It's the same thing as a sex talk. It's like, even if you're uncomfortable doing it, so what? Yeah. You're going to be uncomfortable. Guess what? A lot of parenting is pretty uncomfortable. It's like, were you comfortable when they got up and threw up in your face in the middle of the night? No. But you dealt with it. I do think a lot of people avoid these subjects because it just makes them feel weird. And I think some people even feel like, well, am I being creepy? Like, it just sucks. I think a lot of times it's gotten really convoluted for people. And, I also think there's the importance too of your kid might not be one of the kids that's getting abused or preyed upon, but their friend might be. And if your kid's really well educated on this, those are the people that are going to be more likely to come forward and say, hey, something's going on. Because when you're in the middle of it, half the time you think you're in love, right? You think you're in a consensual situation.
Kids will disclose to their peers. And so that's like in prevention education, when I talk to parents, it's like, your middle schooler needs to know how to report. And they need to understand that these behaviors are wrong. And you don't have to go into detail. I mean, there are people smarter than I am who've written these programs. They give you the right language to use because, so I look back at my peers in high school and they did some really, really shitty things to me that 40 years later, they're still apologizing for. And there's some who never will. But what were we equipped with?
Yeah.
They didn't have the tools. We didn't have the ability to, no one told them the right thing to do or say. Mm-hmm. So you can't really be mad at them for not, having the tools. And so we got to give our kids the tools so it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And they were maybe even possibly hearing stuff from adults about how they were talking about you and just echoing that, back 100%. To you. 100%.
The perpetrator's like, girls, we don't talk about this, do we? Yeah. So, but they didn't know. They didn't have the tools.
We're all still learning, and that's good. Yeah. And I do think as a whole we're getting more educated about.
Well, and language is changing too because hopefully it'll take a little bit of while so you don't have to change the name of your podcast. But grooming they're trying to get away from using that because
that's what we've heard.
Because it's like it needs to be talked about what it is, manipulation. Because grooming has positive connotations. And so and it's been co-opted. And so it's like, why not call it what it really is? Manipulation. I don't know what would rhyme with that. And I love the name of your podcast. So I don't change it. Yeah.
Manipulation Nation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I met with Jetta, what's her last name, from Enough Abuse. I had a meeting with her and she was like, you need to change the name of your podcast. And I was like, girl, I made a logo. It's over. Yeah. It's like, it's done. It's launched. I'm not doing this right now.
And look at the generation you're talking to. They get it. If you call it, mastication after manipulation or whatever, I mean, people are going to be like, I don't understand.
I love it.
Well, and you also don't want it to be like sometimes when you're doing like official stuff, like I used to work for a company, like a nonprofit that was like, prevention management organization of Southeast, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, barf. Like nobody understands what this is. Nobody gets it. Yeah. So we wanted to be a little bit more approachable.
Well, and it tells the listener exactly what they're getting into. Mm-hmm. When, you look at the logo, you see the name, they know exactly what kind of conversation is going to happen.
They see the two little flowers with glasses.
Yeah. And
these ladies are gonna laugh while talking about terrible things.
But it's like you make it real. Now, I host the NC Sesame podcast. We're a little more straight-laced. I don't drop F-bombs. And because it's a different audience. So I think it totally works. And you have completely nailed your market segment. And it's obviously making a pretty big impact because everybody knows who you guys are.
Oh, thank you.
The Bloomin' After Glooming, or
so
Bloomin'. The Bloomin' After Grooming girls, you're talking to them? Oh, yeah.
Oh, listen here. That's so fun.
That's nice to hear because, sometimes it feels like we are yelling into the void. So it's nice to know people are listening.
The beautiful thing about time, because you said it before, it's like, oh, you've been doing this for so long. Time, as you get older, goes much, much faster. Mm-hmm. So, the first 5 years I was married to my husband seemed like 50. But the next 15 seemed like 3. So it's like now it's like, oh crap, we've been married for like 21 years. How did that happen? My kid is 20. How did that happen? I've been doing this for 26 years. How did that? And so as you continue to do it, because it is your avocation and not your job, it's never a drudge. And once it becomes a drudge, that's when you're not supposed to do it anymore because time just seems to go faster through the process. And you get to see how in organizations like SNAP was a survivor-founded organization, a founder-run, and then they had some issues with the founder who was, did amazing things but shouldn't have led the organization as long as she did. And then like every 10 years or so, they have like severe growing pains. But like any organization, it happens. And people are like, oh, it's the end of the world. I'm like, you kidding? This happens every 10 years. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So you just get a different perspective on things. And you get to see that, what we see as glacial movement is actually like catastrophically awesome movement. So
when you really look at it, like, on the thread of time, right? Like you look at like 100 years, this little chunk right here, there's some real like action going on right now. Like,
oh yeah.
And it is exciting and infuriating because there's some things that just like aren't changing, but there's a lot of things that are changing. And even I think just conversations and unfortunately Epstein, that case has given a lot of, I think, awareness to trafficking, which happens in the United States every day. And grooming, manipulation, like that, the coercion into doing something that you don't like fully understand what it is. How do you find joy, Joelle? How do you keep going? How do you stay involved in this work and get through the days where it feels like things aren't happening fast enough or whatever the case may be? What do you do to smile and laugh and see the beauty in life?
I feel like I lead a double life. Like there's this life and then there's the rest of my life. So, my 19-year-old still lives at home. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to cook dinner because Mom, you make the best meals. I'm like, ew, have you had my food? And, I have a husband who's retired and like drives me bananas, but I love him to death. And then I have like all these neighbors that I spend time with and friends, and I'm a runner and I'm still singing, and all the people in that part of my life don't really even see this part anymore, especially once I stopped doing a lot of outward facing advocacy in Orange County. A lot of people think I just dropped out, like, oh, I must have moved on and did something else. But because my role has changed so much and I don't have to do a lot of the things that I did before. So it's very easy to lead a balanced life because in many ways I've jobified this. If you treat it like a job, because you do it because you love it, but at the same time you realize, oh, you don't work 24 hours a day at your job. I've been very, very strong with my boundaries. For many, many years, I was like a top phone number on the SNAP website that survivors would call. And I would tell my husband, I'm like, just don't pick up my phone. I was like, I swear I'm not having an affair. Just don't pick up my phone.
You're like, this is a bummer phone.
Yeah.
Don't
and then
pick
every
it
once in a
up.
while he'd pick it up and he's like, God, why didn't I listen? But you have to learn to have really strong boundaries. It's like, I turn off my phone at a certain time. Having children is enormously humbling because, they show you the true reason for humanity and why we're all here. And I love being a parent. Now in my life, when people meet me and then they find out that I do this, they're like, really? I had no idea. I'm like, wow, I was able to keep it, quiet. So Yeah. I mean, who I am on the internet is very different than who I am in real life, I guess. And keeping those boundaries very, very separate has been super important to me. And so I run and I sing and I tell bad jokes and I hang out with my neighbors and my best friend divorced her husband. Thank God. So I have her back.
Yay!
Shout out to Darcy.
Yeah,
Darcy! Good job.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do, fun things, and so it's just having, strong boundaries and realizing that, I can't change the world, but I can make my world a better place. So
I like what you said, Joelle, about how your role kind of has changed since you got involved. And it's like it's kind of, changed a few times. And Sarah and I, we're baby activists, but, we're doing the podcast and we really love it. And we kind of sometimes have to remind ourselves that what we're doing is also helping people and changing lives. And it's one day I'll be able to say that without feeling like weird about it. But maybe in a few years we find a different lane to go into. And I like that hope, or that there's that option, in the future.
Well, because the world is a dramatically changing place. If I was doing now what I was doing in 2002, I would be faxing press releases to people. We don't do that anymore. You can reach so many more people so much easier now. I mean, I used to have to send out press releases and do a press event and stand in front of a church and hand out flyers, and maybe I would reach 3 people and I would get a story in the paper. Now I get people who are like, oh God, I read your blog post from 2018 and thank you so much. It changed my life.
Is there anything that you or NC Sesame or anyone in your network or community is working on that you want to plug or help promote?
Well, yeah. So NC Sesame has a brand new website. Their amateur designer did a really nice job on it.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So
she's like, no, I'm just being a bitch about someone else's design.
Their designer, I hate her. She sucks. Their social media, it's the worst. They are really doing a big push to get information out there because and it's interesting how much response we're getting. I really like that. So NC Sesame is doing a lot of great work. They're releasing a lot of new data. They have their national blueprint, which came out last year, which is definitely worth a look about the state of educator sexual misconduct. SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, has a new executive director and really working towards a professional organization that can help more people at scale. So that's something else that other people should look at if they've been sexually abused in religious organizations. Zero Abuse Project, where I'm on the board. We have our expanded child abuse prevention education program that is an evidence-based it's the first evidence-based K through 12 prevention education curriculum. And I was trained on the delivery, and it's like 15-minute sessions. It's like easily digestible. And they're doing really, really great work. And for all of these organizations and for all nonprofits in general, it's been a really tough time when it comes to federal funding because a lot of grants have been frozen and things like that. So if you have an organization that you love, whether it's NC Sesame or SNAP or Zero Abuse or the SBC or whoever it is, give those organizations any donation you can, even if it's just $5, because the landscape for sustainable organizations is changing so dramatically. So if the SPCA gets all kinds of donations because of this, I hope they kick some back to NC Sesame. But just, give love to the organizations, because you're all here as a labor of love. We want to help people, and we want to help who we were when we were 15, 16, 7, 8, 9 years old. And so the best way that you can make a difference is with a small donation to the organization of your choice, because that's really where the difference happens.
What a wonderful suggestion.
Okay, well, that's it.
Okay, we're done. Bye.
We're also really bad at ending our podcast. So
we are so bad at ending it.
Dude, even when it's just us, we can't end it. We're always just like,
I know.
Okay,
we're like, all right, that's
how back in the days of radio, the music would just turn up.
But seriously, Joelle, thank you so much for your time and for all the work that you do and have done, and for, again, sharing with us your story.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. I so appreciate what you do, and I'm so glad you're out there.
Well, thank you so much. We feel the same way about you. It's just a love fest.
Yes.
Wow, so much information. I'm glad that she kind of came back to her classmates who treated her poorly and talked about how, they didn't have the tools. Because I know we've talked about how people who didn't treat us poorly have apologized and how we have shown them grace and being like, it wasn't on you. I think that was a nice reminder of, kids are going to echo what they hear from other people. And if no one was saying that's not her fault, then of course that's not what the kids are saying.
Dude, that was a lot. That was a story, man. So especially when it was like the other teacher, I think she was a teacher, like knew and was like, well, if you say anything, you're going to end up back in a psych ward. It's like, wait,
that's
what?
So fucked.
Girl. And I like that she called it a starter marriage. I really like.
I love that.
Sounds like a starter marriage. I was like, ooh, I should start saying that.
I love it. I wrote that down because I have a few friends who could probably relate to that. Like, it was my starter marriage.
That was starter marriage. Yeah, no, she was fascinating. I mean, I think it's just interesting to talk to people that have been doing it for a long time. And I've had to navigate like such crazy waters and, there are like so many different ways. I feel like I opened so many web browsers while she was talking. I was like, okay, I'm looking this up. Like, I really want to read her book also because I feel like that's such a constant like subject I keep having with people. Like, how do I talk to my kids about this?
I had no idea she was an author.
On Goodreads. Dude, she's so nonchalant, dude. Like, I talked to you and then I wrote a book.
That's really important. So we'll definitely, we'll plug the book, all the organizations that she mentioned. She was talking about how she kind of blacklisted herself and was unemployable because she was putting herself out there so much. And thankfully that's not something that I could relate to. She was kind of looking at us like, oh, but neither one of us, I don't think our jobs were ever at risk. And that is, that's an angle that is like, thankfully I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, but it's true. And it's shitty though. Like, why?
Yeah.
Because she's talking about sexual abuse and educator misconduct.
I have definitely thought about it. Like, if I were to switch jobs and work somewhere else and someone were to like Google me and this all pops up, I don't know her situation and why it impacted her career, but I have considered it. And I know it sounds shitty, but I think it would present to some people as this is a difficult woman.
I agree.
This is going to be an outspoken woman who is going to call out bullshit and she's going to be disruptive. Like, not in a bad way, but
let us get away with shit.
She's not going to let us get away with shit. She's going to call us on her shit. She's going to have strong boundaries. She's going to advocate for herself and for others, which for companies isn't always what they want. So, I guess the way I would look at it is like, whatever, dude, if you're a company that sees that and doesn't want to hire me, I probably don't want to fucking work at your company anyways. Yeah. It was definitely something that I was a little neurotic about when we first started doing the podcast of like, what happens when my coworkers find out about it? Like, is it going to be a thing? And it hasn't been, I've had like one, maybe two coworkers that have even been like, hey, I found your podcast. That's awesome. And that's the whole conversation.
Hell yes. Shout out again to Darcy for dumping his ass and divorcing him. Darcy. And shout out to difficult women everywhere. Go be a difficult woman. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. And find us on bloomingafterpod.com, on Instagram and TikTok at bloomingafterpod, and at Gmail, bloomingaftergrooming@gmail.com. And goddamn, do your best to grow through
what you go through.
Yeah. Whoa.
Iron horse. Fire tiger. I should do like a death metal poster of those two.
You really should. Please do.
Fun. I apparently am a fire tiger.
So am I a fire horse?
You were a metal horse.
I'm a metal horse. Wake up!
Horse?
Grab us a bar that'll make up.
A metal horse and a fire tiger. Don't fuck with us.
Don't fuck with us.